Thank you for joining the Sharpest College Football Podcast. This is the third in our series of previewing the field of the college football playoff. I am BuckMetrics, joined as always by Robert Martin, and joined today also by Isaiah Walker. Gentlemen, today, as I get up to speed here, today we are going over the Big 12 and American Conference playoff teams. Seeing as we were set in Texas, I asked AI to help us out a little bit. I apparently grew a mustache, a very flamboyant one at that, and then I'm holding a lasso that's disembodied, I guess is how I'd characterize that. Gotta admit, Isaiah, I did a little bit of artwork on this one, and just one little suggestion to you. I'm sure you can figure out what that is.
I think I can tell.
Yes.
It's exactly what I would be wearing.
Yeah, supporting your favorite coach, Mr. Philip John Fleck. Robert, heel turn here, going from kind Canadian to the don't mess with Texas gear, although he's kindly barbecuing with lights in the backyard there in the middle of summer, as they do in Texas. Like I said, going over the Big 12 and the American Conference playoff teams. Before we get to that, just a little chit-chat about the conferences. Robert, you nailed just how deep and competitive this conference was in the preseason. I didn't think so. I thought Arizona State was going to run away with it. And Texas Tech kind of ran away with it, but there were a lot of teams in contention deep into the season. I can't say I'm really disappointed in ASU or TCU. Any team that really disappointed you in the Big 12?
I think for me it's got to be Kansas. I think Kansas, and I don't know exactly who to blame. I don't want to point a finger at, say, Jalen Daniels. Specifically, I don't want to point a finger at the coach because it's a coach we love. But I expect them to be far more competitive in the Big 12. To a lesser extent, obviously, TCU, they also disappointed me too. Cincinnati massively overperformed my expectations of them.
Yeah.
Iowa State a little under, just an 8-4. A little disappointing there. Arizona State, I'm giving Kenny Dillingham a 100% free pass for this year. Don't care. You are not expected to do well with Jeff Sims. It doesn't matter who you are, but that's fine. He got a couple wins out of him. That's great. Honestly, that's far more than I would have expected. But it's such a, I just think that all of the teams, with I guess the exception of Texas Tech, which I guess has oil money, they're all so deep. And not so many so deep. They're all so around the same tier because they just don't have the money to get the top recruits. The top recruits go to the Big 10 and the SEC, and the Big 12 is now. Big 12 and ACC are fighting for what's left. Those are still good teams. Those are still good players, but it's just they're not the same caliber. So you just can't get the differentiation unless you're at Texas Tech, in which case then your players are just better than a lot of the other teams. So it's such a grinder, and I think maybe with Texas Tech, I don't know. I think Kansas is the one that's the most disappointing for me. I think second would be up there with TCU a little bit, but TCU had a good season too, though. But not as good as it could have been. But yeah, 100% has to be Kansas.
Yeah, and their problem's really on the defensive side of the ball. And
yeah,
I think you and I had a little extra context in terms of I can't say Oklahoma State disappointed because we had, when they made the Big 12 title game 2 years ago, we both had them just severely overrated, and so we saw last year as a continuation, not an aberration. So I don't think we saw them being this bad, but we knew that they were going to stink, so can't really call them a disappointment. Isaiah, what about you? Who really exceeded or really disappointed your expectations?
Yeah, definitely Kansas is even making a bowl is pretty shocking. I didn't think that they were going to compete for the conference title or anything, but they just took such a big step back from what we've come to expect with them under Leopold. And I agree with Robert that it's a multitude of factors. I don't want to blame it on any one thing. So that was disappointing. Now, I didn't really buy into the Kansas State hype before the season, but I think even if you weren't oh, they're one of the favorites to win the Big 12, I didn't believe that at all. But even if you weren't like that, I think 6-6 is just a massive underperformance for them. Obviously now they're out of a coach, so that I don't know if it was just something stale here. Something needs to make a change. But they got hit with the Ireland game curse, basically. They lost the Ireland game. They lost to Army. And then it was just barely scraping by. We're beating bad teams, and that's basically all we can do. So they're definitely a massive disappointment to me. I think anybody can argue that. Iowa State's an interesting team because it's 8-4 is pretty solid. But I think what's disappointing with them is how they started, not just beating Kansas State in Ireland. They beat Iowa. That ended up being a pretty darn good win.
Yeah.
They beat Arizona. That's a great win.
Yeah.
When we look at that. But they lost 4 games in a row, and what killed your season was losing 2 in a row to Cincinnati and then Colorado. Like losing to Colorado, that can't happen, right? So I think that's just disappointing. Like even if you drop the Cincinnati game, because they did not end up being awful, they ended up being an improved team that looked like they know how to play football. But you win the Colorado game, you finish 9-3, you just feel a whole lot different, even with Matt Campbell leaving. Yeah, I think there's some disappointment in there. As far as teams that overperform, pretty impressed with Houston. I did not expect much out of Houston. I was like maybe get to a bowl game or something. No, they ended up going 6-3 in conference, 9-3. They looked like a fundamentally sound football team, like good defense, pretty fun to watch at times. Honestly, they had some pretty fun games, and I think that's interesting because, like I said, I think that was a team that I thought was like feels like there's not a lot here. I don't know. Is Houston really a team that I usually just skip out on Houston until basketball season starts, right? So yeah, I thought Houston was a pretty good story. And then the last thing was on the Colorado note. I expected things to go downhill for Colorado. I did not expect it to be this bad. Like I bet their wins under, which was an absurd number. But 3-9. Let me see who they beat. Yeah, 3 wins. They beat Iowa State was their only Big 12 win. And then they beat Wyoming, and they beat the Fighting Joe Bidens. So.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That's brutal. That's brutal.
Thin resume.
Yeah. I don't believe in the Deion thing. I don't think the Deion thing works. I think the Deion thing was great when you had Travis Hunter and his son and everybody. But I don't know. We'll see where that goes. But yeah, Colorado, boy, that's bad.
Yeah. Weirdly, I think that Colorado over Iowa State was a dual model play too, and and
then they won.
And I think it was one where we were both like, okay, hold your breath and see if this airplane really flies.
Yeah,
and it did.
It's weird how sometimes the model will just like straight up call something, and we're like, that's weird, and then it's just no, that's actually correct, and it's something that we don't necessarily. I've learned to trust it more than not because sometimes we don't even, it's imperceptible, right? Sometimes it's just, this team is just doing slightly worse than we think they should be doing, or they're just not doing X or Y as well. So, like, it's so many imperceptible things. And the thing is, to be fair, Iowa State did struggle a little bit down the stretch. Now, whatever, that's not impacting my opinion for Matt Campbell there at Penn State. But that program is going to be, I don't know what's going to happen there now. That's going to be a fade candidate for sure, like 100%. I think we're just be fading Iowa State. The fact that he got as much as he was able to get out of Iowa State, I think, is a miracle. So
I totally agree. It's one of those absolute culture fit things, right? Like he knew exactly how to win there. It's a hard place to win, really hard place to win, and credit to him. That's one of the reasons why, like when his name started getting passed around for the Penn State job, part of me thought he wasn't going to take it because I thought it was like, boy, he's such a fit at Iowa State, and you take a risk, right, when you have established yourself so much. It would be like if you got the news that like Kirk Friends was taking the Florida job. What would you say?
I'd say more Graham Mertz jokes for Robert.
But yeah, I agree. It's a really tricky thing, and I think Iowa State, unless they can, they promoted internally, right? Didn't they?
I think so. Yeah,
that always works out well.
Yeah, especially when at a program like that where they're so deep. Come on.
Oh, Jimmy Rogers.
Yep.
They got Jimmy Rogers, who was with Washington
State. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Back to your point on Houston, that's a really good point. They're way ahead of schedule. There wasn't a lot there last year, and the only thing that was there was the defense, and they lost a defensive coordinator to Texas Tech, who's done an amazing job. So it looked really grim, and they, like you said, they had a good season. Now they have a really high-profile quarterback that's signed on, too, coming in. So Willie Fritz just doing his stuff, man, with totally under the radar, too. So that might be another one to keep an eye on in terms of just early season programs to maybe find a good spot or two on. All right, the American, won by Tulane, who now has lost their coach. A lot of coaches lost the American. The American loses a lot of coaches. North Texas Robert, you and I and Duck all kind of were on the same bent. Didn't quite work out in the championship game, which is fine. They really outperformed compared to basically what everybody thought coming into the season. I really can't think of any American team that disappointed. I would say the bad teams were just expectedly bad, unless I'm missing somebody. I'll say this. I'm working on a really good thesis about Tim Albin and Ohio. I'll workshop it over the off season, but it's interesting. I think that he has a lot to prove, and Charlotte's not the most fun team to talk about in the American. North Texas was a surprise, but other than that, it seemed pretty formful this year in the American, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, no huge surprises in the American, right? We expected Tulane to be good. We expected North Texas, no one else really did. And again, no regrets there, right? We had a 15, 20 to 1 ticket going into the championship game. No regrets on that. Could we have hedged out? Sure, yeah, maybe, but whatever. But again, like USF, again, we liked USF. That was one of the teams we liked to some extent. They didn't win the championship, but very clearly showed themselves. And again, now he's the coach of Auburn. Good luck to him. Good luck to Coolidge as head coach of Auburn. But no, that was pretty much what we expected. And I think when we make this case, we talked just there a bit about Matt Campbell and potentially like he's going to go to Penn State now, and that will probably impact his team now. Iowa State's probably going to be on a bit of a decline now going forward. So the question now is then, what does all of these hirings from the American do now? Tulane's coach is gone, North Texas's coach is gone, USF's head coach is gone too. That's 3 of the top, and Memphis is too. Memphis is up there, not as good, but up there. So that's 4 straight up gone now. And I think it's like I think you view it as like the forest, right? Like sometimes the old trees die and crash down to the ground, and then the newer trees can grow up, right? I think next year is us, especially in the next couple of months, it's going to be us trying to figure out what those new trees are that are going to sprout up, figuring out just how far do those old trees fall.
Yeah, very well said. Memphis, by the way, the only other time I can really explicitly remember this, they lose their coach to a bigger program, and they wind up in a better position than they were before the coaching move, and that they get Charles Huff. It's like my school being so dumb as to hire Sark away from Washington, who goes on and gets Chris Peterson. And of course, we had a truly inept athletic director, one in a series of truly inept athletic director. And who made this move happen for Memphis? Oh yeah, the idiot that runs the college football playoff committee, the chairman. Amazing how that works. All right, Isaiah, anything stand out to you in this year in the American?
No, yeah, I was with you guys on North Texas as well, both for the championship game and just the overall season. So yeah, tough loss there, but 11-2, I smashed their win total, so I can't complain there. Solid showing for Navy, 10-2. That's a great year for Navy. I was on South Florida right from the beginning. I was on them spread and money line against Boise State. That just took over. I was on them spread against Florida. I really should have seen Sunbelt Billy coming on that one and taken the money line as well, but I only took the spread. I think the one thing that I took away outside of the top teams from the American is how Memphis just keeps getting away with being perpetually mediocre and underperforming. Every year we go into the season saying this is the year that Memphis is going to win the American, and it's not. It's never the year that Memphis is going to win the American because they'll screw it up. They'll find some dump. Like they beat Arkansas, right? They're 4-0 and they beat Arkansas, and I know Arkansas is bad, right? But okay, you got to win over an SEC team. You're feeling great, and then who did you lose to? You lost. Yeah. That's not great. And then you lose your last 3 straight, including to East Carolina, which is just brutal. I don't know. And then somehow that's your season. And then somehow Arkansas says, this is the coach. We want this guy. We want this guy who perpetually is picked to win his conference and not only never wins his conference, very winnable conference, he never wins it at a program that has way more money than the other program, but he often doesn't even come close. Like 8-4 this year in the American was or 8-4 in conference play. You weren't even close.
Yeah.
So that's not going to work in Arkansas. I'm going to be fading Arkansas like more than you would normally fade Arkansas. That was like my main takeaway coming out of the American was what the heck did Arkansas do?
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned ECU. quietly a pretty good season, and with all the coaching changes, maybe a team that just moves up in year 2.5 of the new guy whose name I forget, but they were better than I expected. I think, Robert, you actually had them in the preseason predictions in the conference title game. Maybe you're just a little early rather than wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I forget his name, but did a good job. They got the right guy. The announced promotion that actually did work. All right, so we will take you back to the grid that looks like an eye chart for CPAs, if you will. Graphical representation of all 12 teams in the playoff with the metrics. You got the predictives up. Oops. There we go. I've got my descriptives up here, then the predictives from the Athena model, wins above average per the BuckMetrics model, Robert's ranking in all of FBS, and then the DraftKings price as of about a week ago to win the national title. So let's start with Texas Tech. The first thing that sticks out to me here is quarterback play adjusted for strength of opponent actually below average in this field, which kind of I think would surprise some people in that they've earned a solid reputation as a top 4 team. I think they're more of a top 5 team, but number 4 was not invited this year, so maybe they move up to a legitimate number 4. Interesting that as exciting as this team is, the quarterback play is a little bit of a deficiency for them. Now, they do have a more explosive offense. This Ryan per game is a counting stat, so some of that might be accounted for by their up-tempo play that they play with. The defense is just as good as it gets outside of the Big Ten, I will say. Really good pass defense. Run defense is literally as good as it gets. The offense, again, I think this is going to surprise people. It's below par. It's basically average in this field here. Robert, you have them ranked number 6. I'll just say this. The more I dig into this, I have a hard time seeing them. Let's just assume that Oregon beats James Madison, go out on a very small limb here. I have a hard time with Texas Tech beating Oregon. I think Oregon's just a much more well-balanced team, right?
So the interesting thing is, we had, in our previous kind of analysis of this, we just said, oh wow, Oregon, Texas Tech, 50-50 game, moving on. And I think now we're drilling down a bit more into Texas Tech. And I think one of the things that's interesting about Texas Tech is that whenever they've played a good team, I'm fairly sure the under has hit, right? And that's 2 straight games against BYU that the under hit. That's the best team they played all year. They played them twice, beat them twice. Arizona State, actually, I don't remember if that was a shoot or not, but they did lose that game. That would have been because that was with Sam Leavitt, so that would have been their next best game. Yeah. And then when they played Utah, that game was a relatively close game for most of the game, actually. Now, I think eventually it did go over, but that was because of a bunch of defensive stuff.
A bunch of turnovers in the fourth quarter. That game went off the rails in a really weird way.
Yeah. So, again, that's the analysis of this kind of Texas Tech team here. And it's a little underwhelming. I get how when we're doing this, you're ranking the teams, 10-1 conference championship game, 10-1 conference champion. Yeah, you got to probably. Oh, sorry, not 10-1. That would have been 11-1 conference champion, 12-1 actually after the game. So 12-1 conference champion. You have to rank them in the top 4. You have to. But if we're being honest here, I think the 11-1 Oregon is probably, looking at our analysis here and looking at just the stats on this page, Oregon is the better team. Oregon is just a better team, and I think that's the point here, is that I don't think they played a bunch, they were just better than the rest of the Big 12. They were I think when we look at this, when we see the Texas Tech team play, or probably Oregon, don't think it's going to be JMU, but it could be JMU, but if they play Oregon, or if they get past Oregon and play Indiana, I think we're going to basically be this Texas team was a mid-tier SEC team that played a bunch of Big 12 teams. And I think that's because, when you look at this, it's a kind of similar number here. Just actually looking across the board, it's a kind of similar numbers here to Georgia. It's around at Georgia, and you want to say Georgia's the best team in the SEC? Sure, okay. I don't love that, and I don't love saying that, but okay. But the numbers here are I don't think Georgia was really that great. I know they're only one loss, conference champions, sure. But Georgia wasn't the most impressive. There was a lot of games where they should have lost. They should have had probably at least 2 to 3 more losses, just on an aggregate percentage, on an aggregate probability. I think Texas Tech is a lot more similar to a mid-tier SEC team that just played a bunch of Big 12 teams that they were just better on all sides of the game. They relied very heavily on the defense. They were able to score on pretty bad defenses themselves, but in more tough games, their offense just was not able to get it going. It was able to do some stuff, and yeah, okay, they blew out BYU, but we're not looking at this was not like we're winning we're not putting up 50, we're putting up 35, and that's because of a defensive score in there or because of a defensive. And that was the same thing in that Houston game. Yeah, okay, they blew out Houston, but that was the defense getting a lot of short fields there. And okay, yes, I know that's how the game works, right? You have great defensive players, that's great. But you also never been playing offenses that are quite as great as the Oregon team you're about to go up against or as the Indiana team that you're about to go up against. And also, the defenses you're about to go up against have not been as good either, right? You've got a great defense, but BYU's defense is definitely not a 19.3. It's definitely not a 15.8. You're going to be going up against very soon now some of the best defenses in the country. And I don't know if their offense is going to be able to step it up, especially when another offense is going to be able to punch them in the face.
Yeah, the other thing, too, that sticks out to me is going back to when they played Utah, the big question about Texas Tech was how good are they because they haven't played anybody. Their non-conference was really weak this year. And I bring that up because the reason that I'm so bullish on Indiana is they're 2-0 against this field. They beat Oregon at Oregon, and they beat Ohio State at a neutral field. Texas Tech hasn't played anybody in this field. They've played a handful of teams that are in that next level of a fringe playoff contenders, like a Utah of that caliber. It's the same kind of level at BYU. It's the same level where my school is, and like a Vandy. It's okay. If you really squint and there's a couple of airplane tragedies and we need a couple more teams to fill in, maybe one of these teams gets in, but I think as good as their defense is, I think that there's going to be a culture shock. There's nothing, and I said this about JMU, I don't think they've seen anything like Kenyon Sadiq in the Big 12. The Big 12 is a nice conference, but I don't know, Isaiah, do you think there's just a culture shock that kind of dooms them to a degree?
Yeah, I look at their schedule and I compare them to Oregon, right? And it's the same thing, right? But both of them lost. Oregon lost to the best team they faced. They lost to Indiana. Yeah. But then Oregon, if we move down to their next tier wins, right? Who do they have? They win against USC. They won at Washington, so you got home Washington.
Yes.
And they won at Iowa, right?
Iowa, how about home Iowa? Home Iowa is like a fringe playoff team, right?
We're talking about a team that almost beat Indiana at home. We're talking about a team that almost that I could say almost beat USC at USC. Yeah. They were leading that game late.
Oh, it was a toe was worth of difference on an out-of-bounds play. Yeah, literally.
Yeah, those are really good wins for Oregon that I think that people won't necessarily look at. And then I look at that at Texas Tech, right? Texas Tech has the single better win in beating BYU twice. I think that BYU is probably more impressive than beating, or at least beating them twice, probably more impressive than beating any of the single opponents that Oregon played. Both of them weak non-conferences, right? Both of them played Oregon State. I think I would give I don't know. It's not even worth comparing their non-conferences. Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Kent State, Oregon State to whatever Oregon did. It's not really worth it. I don't know. I do feel like Oregon, there's almost something to it in that I feel like Oregon has been more battle tested because not only have they beaten more teams with a quote unquote semi-playoff pulse than Texas Tech has, but I actually think that some of the close games that Oregon were in, like that Iowa game, I feel like that is the experience you need to have to get into the playoff and understand, look, you're playing really good teams now. You aren't going to walk through this field. Like most people do not do what Ohio State did last year, where you just cakewalk through the field, beat everybody by 20 and call it a day. That's just not really how this sport works. And I do question, Texas Tech was only in one dogfight this year, and they lost it. They lost to Arizona State. Now, that's great if you think you can go into the playoff and beat everybody by 50, but again, that's usually not what happens. So I do think that that's a concern. Now, I don't want to sleep on their defense because their defense is just so darn good. And Oregon is going to have to figure that out because Oregon's best showing against good defenses, right? Lost at home to Indiana. They got embarrassed, really, by Indiana. I know that it was only a 10-point game in the end, but it did not feel like a 10-point game. They really got shut down by that defense. And again, they found ways to win. They found a way to win at Iowa, but that Iowa defense really bothered them. But that is certainly a concern. It's something you're going to have to look out for. But I don't know. We'll have to see whether it translates to this level, whether it translates. I think Oregon is a bad matchup for them. Again, I don't want to say, oh yeah, this is just a team that clearly is going to lose Oregon. We don't know what's going to happen, but I do think it's a really tricky matchup for them. And just thinking out loud on terms of their apex, right? Like what could be like? I just look at the way they played this year, the opponents they played, the style. It's in a situation where they really didn't need the quarterback play to be special, right? Like none of these games really require. They weren't in any games where like the quarterback had to win them the game. They were always either up. They could run the ball, get up early, right? So there's my question. You're playing Oregon, right? What happens if you go down 7-0? What happens if you go down 10-0? And now you can't necessarily just rely on your defense and your run game to win the game. They don't have bad quarterback play, right? Like they absolutely could come back and win the game. But have they been tested? They haven't really been in a situation where that is applicable, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's my biggest concern with Texas Tech. Now, if they beat Oregon and they go ahead, then I think you start looking to say, okay, maybe this is sustainable. Maybe this is just how this team is going to play, and they're going to be a defensive first team, and we'll see probably getting Indiana after that, which, again, another really bad matchup because that's a team with a defense as good as yours, if not better. I know the model might not necessarily say that they're a better defense, but boy, that defense is really nasty. I saw what they did to Ohio State.
They're right there. Yeah.
So, maybe the idea is, okay, if you get past Oregon, we'll see. But I don't like them at plus 800 to win the thing because this path that they have is so unfavorable, not just in terms of the talent that they have to play, but the styles that they're going to match up against. Like Oregon and Indiana is about as bad as you can get. If you had said they were going to go up against Georgia, I could be intrigued into a matchup of what they would do against Georgia because of what their defense can do and what happens to Georgia when their quarterback play goes downhill. But I don't like this side of the bracket for them.
It's a really tough draw. And when we did the Big Ten preview, we said Oregon definitely the best value of the Big Ten teams at plus 750. I think Texas Tech at plus 800 I would need a lot more than that. I would need a lot more than that. Yeah, so just go ahead.
Why is Texas Tech, when Texas Tech needs to go through Oregon and Indiana and then another team on the other side of the bracket to win this whole thing, not talking individual games, but to win the whole thing, they are plus 800. Why are they plus 800 when Miami is plus 2,500?
Yeah, exactly.
Are we putting that much stock into you'll have to face Ohio State but again, Texas Tech has to face Indiana, right? So I don't understand that. I don't understand the difference between these two lines because I think Texas Tech is a really good team. I've really liked them this entire season, and I've made money betting on them. But are they that much better than Miami other than the fact that they're not coached by Mario Cristobal?
Okay, not an insignificant difference, though, in all fairness.
No, it is a significant difference. Is it plus 1,700 worth of a difference?
It's crazy. I don't think that their quarterback play has had anything close to the couple of bad Carson Beck games or the sulky affairs, but that doesn't account for all of that. Agree 100% on your take on Indiana's just kind of, I don't know if to say a beefed up, but just a more tightened up version of Oregon. I can't make a case for them against Indiana if I can't make a case for them against Oregon, which I pretty much can't. It's tough. Robert, could you possibly see them getting past Oregon and Indiana?
I don't think so. When you look at what Indiana did to Oregon, again, functionally a 17-point win if there wasn't a pick six. And I mean, and again, the look-ahead lines for the second round are basically a pick for Oregon, Texas Tech. I think it was like Texas Tech -1 or Oregon -1 or whatever, right? So you've got to imagine that the line for, at least the book line for Indiana, Oregon neutral field has got to be -7. Got to be -7.5, at least 3.5, -7.5. And like, I don't see it. I understand the power ratings perspective as to why that is, but like we saw Indiana completely shut down Ohio State offensively, right? Actually, one of the most dominant defensive performances against Ohio State the entire year. Penn State scored more points than Ohio State did against Indiana, and like that means something. We're already saying Texas Tech is actually surprisingly a little weak on offense. What are they going to do to that defense? And yeah, okay, Texas Tech's got a great defense. Okay, not as good as the Ohio State one. Not as good as Ohio State's. Not as good as Oregon's defense. Yeah, okay. Ohio State held Indiana to 13 points, but actually it felt like they should have scored more based on how Indiana was moving the ball in that game. It definitely feels like they left some points on the table. Texas Tech is not holding Indiana to 13 points, and I don't think that they could score whatever that difference would be. So the thing is, again, I don't hate Texas Tech's coach. I think he's fine, but I don't think he's as good as Dan Lanning. And I think that if there's anyone who gets a second chance at taking down Indiana versus with Dan Lanning and Ryan Day, Dan Lanning, either of them could win a rematch, but I don't think that Texas Tech seeing Indiana live for the first time is going to be able to take them down. I think Dan Lanning has a shot for a rematch, but I don't think Tech has the firepower to do it.
And to your point, if you, let's say that Texas Tech beats Oregon and you wake up the next day and the line is Indiana -7, is there a single one of us that's not going straight to Indiana on that?
No, 100%.
Exactly. That would be instant bet for me.
I bet it would be shorter than that, though. I think that there's a lot of brand embellishment when it comes to Texas Tech.
If it's shorter than that, if I wake up after that Oregon-Texas Tech game and it's Texas Tech -3.5, I'm betting alt lines.
You mean plus 3.5? You mean, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Indiana -3.5. Yeah.
Yeah. No, fair. And I think we touched on this in the Big Ten thing, and I just bears repeating. That Oregon-Texas Tech game just feels like an under. That just feels like that it's going to land in like the low 40s. Two really good defenses, and you got one offense that I think just can't keep pace there. So I wouldn't be surprised if in about 8 days from now there's a dual model play on that under. So anything else about Texas Tech from either of you guys?
No, like again, and I always preface things like this is that I said it with Indiana last year. You are not what your playoff performance is most of the time. Now, if Texas Tech loses to Oregon like 50-0, then maybe we could talk. But you still had a really good season. It turns out that oil money is good for football. Who would have known? But like Big 12 champions, 11-1, absolutely, or 12-1 absolute championship game. Nothing to shy of. So even though we don't necessarily view you as a team to win this thing, that doesn't mean that you had a bad season by any means. That any of what you did should be discounted. It certainly doesn't mean that I'm going to go into next season and say, oh, yeah, Texas Tech, they lost to Oregon in the first round. Maybe they're a little fraudulent. Maybe we should fade. That's not how it works. It's just a good thing to always say. For any of the Big 12 listeners or any of the Texas Tech listeners, right, this is not a Texas Tech is fraudulent kind of thing. I think you got an unfortunate draw here.
Yeah, not a lot of teams like Oregon roaming the Big 12 footprint.
Yeah, and it's also like last year with Oregon, right? Congratulations on your 1 seed, and your reward was playing Ohio State after Ryan Day got death threats.
Yes. Said. So then we'll go to the other team to talk about your American champ, Tulane, at a very generous 800-1 to win the playoff. Actually, somehow a longer shot than JMU, which is a little surprising, but whatever. Thank you, DraftKings. Tulane, let's just start with the first matchup here against Ole Miss. Literally outclassed if I'm looking at every single metric except for run defense here. That's where they have an advantage over Ole Miss, but both teams are well below average in terms of run defense in this group of teams. Tulane's offense is pretty average by American standards, which is going to really just hurt you here. Defense not great for a Summerall team. Literally the worst power rating under Athena in this entire field. Only Oregon had a lower wins above average. Robert has them pegged as the worst in this field by 11 spots below A&M and 14 below JMU. I'm making quite the case here, am I not? Now, having said all of that, Robert and I discussed this quite a bit when we were going through the round 1 games. I wouldn't be surprised if they beat Ole Miss. Only because you've got John Summerall has won 3 conference title games. He's made 4 conference title games in 4 years. Robert, remind me, how many conference title games has Pete Golding won?
I don't think he's won any conference title games.
Okay. How many regular season games has he won as a head coach?
0. What did he even?
Okay.
What's his even resume? So he's one of the coordinators for Ole Miss.
He is defensive coordinator for, I think this is his 3rd year.
Okay. Their defense is
and before that,
great.
Not this year. They were really good last year. Before that, he was the DC under Saban, which must have been a lot of fun. I'll just say that. So I cannot overstate how strongly I feel about this is a really weird place to make your coaching debut. And again, against a guy who's won 3 conference title games. And not like at Troy, he had incredibly better players than the rest of the Sun Belt. Tulane is one of the better resource programs, but again, Memphis just has built-in advantages as like the most moneyed program in that conference, and yet it's Tulane who made the conference title game 2 years in a row. I think that there's a lot of value to that angle. Now, Ole Miss might run away with this just on sheer talent, but if this is a game, man, I don't know. There's one coach that I could see puckering, and it's not the next head coach at Florida. I'll put it that way. Isaiah, can you buy any of that theory?
I can. I think the way I look at it is, if I woke up the next day and Tulane had beaten Ole Miss, I would not be like, this would not be the ultimate, like, I would be far more like jaw drop to see that James Madison had beaten Oregon.
Exactly.
But I'm also not betting that Tulane will beat Ole Miss. I do have Ole Miss spread on this one, and the only reason I did that was, again, I think I mentioned this in the Big Ten preview. This 12-team format has convinced me that there is such a level of separation between the power teams that make this field and the G5 teams that make this field that I'm just really struggling to see situations where these teams just compete, keep it close. I think it's an interesting angle because had you said at the beginning of the season, Ole Miss and Tulane are going to play each other, and there would be a coach that is not here, we would have assumed that Summerall was gone, that Summerall got hired away and he left. Instead, it's Lane Kiffin has left and is not at Ole Miss. So that is an interesting angle, right? You have to ask yourself, how much did Ole Miss, how much of it was Lane Kiffin? I think a lot of it was Lane Kiffin. And that is your path for Tulane right here. Very well-coached team. And by the way, Tulane has some good wins. They beat Duke. That's a good win. ACC
champ Duke. Yes, exactly.
They beat Northwestern 23-3. Northwestern ended up not being like a total tomato can. Obviously, like one at Memphis. They beat North Texas in that champ game. That's a perfectly fine win. The thing that we have to look at in this game is that these two teams played each other already, and it was a 45-10 win for Ole Miss. So here's your question. This game is at Ole Miss again. This game was at Ole Miss before. Is Lane Kiffin being absent of this game worth 35 points? I don't think so.
Fair. I'll put it this way. His absence isn't going to get us the whole way there. Let's not forget that like Jake Retzlaff wasn't even in for spring. He even missed some of summer practices as well. I think they're a more finished product right now.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm sure he certainly got better as the season went on because of that. But at the same time, he beat Northwestern and Duke.
Yeah, fair. But yeah, Ole Miss is
significantly better. But that's where I get back to
a step up.
That's where we get back to it again. Right? Is we're talking about two teams that are at the end of the day, like one of these teams is a very well coached, very well put together group of 5 team, but they're playing one of the better teams in the SEC. So there's your question, right? Is this just a talent gap that is too big to overcome? And that's my opinion that it is. But again, like I said, if I wake up the next day and it's Tulane only lost by 3 or Tulane won the game, it wouldn't be like that's one of the biggest upsets I can imagine.
Yeah. Robert, you were going to say.
Yeah, a couple things I will say on that. I think Tulane and Ole Miss played, and I want to say week 2. So, again, if there was an effect of Jake Retzlaff starting later with Tulane, you would see it there. You wouldn't see it when they played Duke, I think, in like week 4 or 5, and Northwestern, I think, in like week 6. So that's one thing to factor in. as well. So again, you said that they won by 35, that's correct. So let's chip away at that 35 points. So one, that was Jake Retzlaff in like very early in the season. I think they played I think not maybe an FCS team in week 1 or something. They played someone in week 1, and I think they played them in week 2. So
they played no, they didn't play an FCS team. They played South Alabama in week 2. That was in between the Northwestern and Duke games.
Wait, okay, so when did they play? They played Ole Miss week 1?
No, they played Ole Miss week 4. They started 3. They beat Northwestern. They beat South Alabama by 2. Then they beat Duke, and then they went to Ole Miss in week 4.
Oh, okay. Okay, so maybe it was a bit later in the season. Okay. All right, so let's throw that point out then. But, okay, so one, I'm fairly sure if you go through Ole Miss's schedule, Tulane was their best non-conference game. Fairly sure.
I'm sure.
So if you're Lane Kiffin and you recognize that, hey, winning non-conference games matter, you're going to try to push that line up as much as you can. You're going to try to blow them out as much as you can, right? So you're going to keep going deep into the fourth. That's one thing. As well, Lane is gone, right? And I think that we haven't really talked much specifically about, like, where are all the other pieces on this program going? Trinidad Chambliss, is he LSU's quarterback next year, right? Obviously, this isn't a lot of these decisions haven't been made yet. But if I'm Lane Kiffin, 1,000%, if I want Trinidad Chambliss, I've had people reach out to him to get him to come to LSU next year. Other pieces as well, they will know whether or not they have a home at LSU next year as well. And also, all the coaches, right? They're also, some of them have moved on, some of them haven't, right? So this is the thing. There is a kind of a tug of war of who is here next year, who isn't. Also, would not surprise me if, because of all that, again, this was only a few weeks ago. This was only just, 2 weeks ago now, right? If you're Ole Miss and you're trying to figure out where you are next year, are you still at Ole Miss? Are you going to LSU? Are you going to transfer somewhere else? If you're trying to figure all this now, which, again, these conversations are 1,000% happening. It's not just, we moved the portal back. No one's talking about this stuff. It's very clearly happening still now. If this is all that's happening, then are they really seriously preparing for Tulane, a team they beat by 35? Like, I'm fairly sure they're just going to recycle the stuff they ran last time because it worked so well. Let's deal with other stuff. Let's prepare for Georgia, the team that we lost against. I almost worry that Ole Miss is going to look past Tulane and start worrying about Georgia or other stuff rather than Tulane. A couple other pieces on this, too. Because when you look at any clip now about the talking heads talking about the playoff now, they're like, oh, why is Tulane and James Madison in? They shouldn't be in. They shouldn't be in. They shouldn't be in. I don't want them in there. They're like, that could be other teams that are better, more deserving. When you have that much of basically, when everybody's on one side of the boat, immediately go to the other side of the boat, right? Now here, and piggybacking off what Isaiah said, right? Yeah, if we found out JMU beat Oregon, yeah, I'd be completely shocked. And everybody would be as 21.5-point underdogs. You very rarely see it sometimes, but very rarely do you see 21-point underdogs win. If Tulane won and beat Ole Miss, especially since that Ole Miss was basically lost their head coach and there's turmoil in the program, I could believe it. And I think that just because of all of there's no way a G5 team could ever win one of these games, I think they're due now to win one game. I feel like they're going to win one of these games. So now maybe I could be wrong on that. That could be just a crazy thing. But I feel like when everybody's on, oh, why are they even here? There's no point in them even being here. They can't compete. They can't win. I think there might be some value on betting on one of them. I think one of them might be able to pull down a win. That's my take.
One of those pieces that I thought you were going to mention, we might have hit on this a little bit. I think I had mentioned this, but I have to repeat this too. Now, because my school had a real thing to change coaches like every 3 years because the athletic director sucked, you get up close and personal, you see a new coach at a new program. They're like going to prove how hardworking they are, and they're going to, hey, new program, everybody, you're coming on board and get prepared to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. We have to turn this thing around right away. And I bring that up because I can't believe that Ole Miss is going to get anything near the best from Charlie Weiss Jr. as the OC. And I don't know if that's a detriment if we're trying to chip away at the 35 points. I think that's a pretty big piece too. And then it's not like he has Lane Kiffin there, I don't say holding his hand, but to basically bail him out and say, we'll figure this out. Pete Golding's not going to be able to say, yeah, I got you, bro. I know what plays to call here if we're struggling. There's just a lot of pieces. That's another piece that just, boy, I'd be a little concerned.
On the Lane Kiffin thing, though, if we're just like trying to parse like mindsets and stuff, like how is this team thinking? Is there an angle to think that maybe that Ole Miss will actually be what whoever is playing? We won't know that, like, with all these games. Like even now in the NIL era, we're talking about not even knowing whether players are going to even play in the playoffs or not, right? But their motivation with Ole Miss, with how Lane Kiffin left, to be like, no, actually, screw you. We're actually going to show that we are more than you. Like, I was thinking about this, too, because he burned every bridge. And the thing that I really disliked about how he left was he tried to make it like, oh, I really wanted to coach my team, but they told me I couldn't. No, dude, no, get out. Go away. And then he was like, oh, okay, no. Then actually, if you don't come with me now, then you don't have a spot on my staff. And actually only a couple people went with him. Was it like it was just the offensive coordinator? Was it the only?
I think one or two position coaches too.
Nowhere near as many people as I thought would have left. And so part of me thinks that who is there, the coaches who are still there, are going to be like, excuse me, like we're more than you. Like we are still a really good team, and we did not need you to hold our hand to this. Now that will become. The power of friendship only goes so far, right? When you're playing Georgia and or Ohio State, that only goes so far. But I do feel like there's going to be some motivation on this team to show that they're not just here to lay down and die just because the coach left.
Fair, very fair.
Actually, I just want to make one quick point on that. Why is Pete Golding not going to LSU?
I think. Again, this is a ham-bone thing, as he's the LSU source, as I develop a network that rivals that of The Athletic here. LSU, I think, is keeping Brad Baker, who did a really good job there. And I would think that's part of the deal. I'd be shocked. Definitely, those kind of things are negotiated in the interview and negotiating process. Sure, that was covered. So maybe Golding... Look, the defense is really good last year at Ole Miss, not this year. I don't think Kiffin was like, screw you, I hate you, Golding, you're not getting on the plane. I think it was more like we're covered, we're good. Good luck to you in running this team, and not in an FU way. Because I think, Isaiah, I don't know if you're aware of this. I think, Robert, you and I discussed this. LSU has covered whatever bonus that Kiffin would have gotten through postseason success at Ole Miss. LSU's going to cover that. So say that Ole Miss makes a championship game, and that would have been a bonus for Kiffin of $500,000. LSU's actually going to cover that, which is interesting. Yeah, not a bad gig. It's really nice to be a good head coach, or at least a coach that's in demand. All right, so I think we've chewed that one up pretty good. Now, if the crazy thing happens and Tulane beats Ole Miss, I can't see him getting past Georgia. Yeah. As much as we've pointed out the acne on the Georgia Mona Lisa, there's all the case I just made for Ole Miss falls apart.
And the funny thing is, like, we're talking about, okay, so I'm looking at that angle that I just presented, right? Okay, these coaches want to prove something, they want to win something. That's great. Okay, you beat Tulane, you beat the good G5 team. That's awesome. Now you have to play the team that Lane Kiffin could never beat. So it's the opposite. Shoot, we couldn't beat him while he was here. What are we supposed to do now?
Yeah, and all the smart-ass setups I did for Robert about how many regular season wins and how many playoff or how many like conference title. You play that game with Kirby and it becomes grim pretty quickly. For a guy who has 2 national championships and I don't even know how many SEC titles, it's just a different thing. And the other thing too that's interesting, I think we talked about this, Robert, is, I'll make this my last point. I think it's interesting. Boy, Summerall is, not that he's not going to load, but there's so much more motivation here. How much would he love to be as the head coach of Florida? How much easier would it be to recruit against it like an Ole Miss program? Just saying, yeah, I beat him at Tulane. Why would you even want to go there? Now I'm at Florida. It would just make the recruiting matchup so much easier for him, too. I think that's a pretty cool dynamic for this game, too, as well, just where he's going to land at his next job. Anything else on Tulane from either of you guys?
No, I think we covered it. Yeah.
Okay. So 800 to 1 seems a fair price on them. I'll just put it that way. And if you are interested in playing that, put it in the comments on YouTube. Maybe you and I can do business. I'll just say that. All right. Since we have a little bit of time here, Isaiah's going to give us some of his favorite bowl plays here. And these are all blind to me. So,
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, we didn't discuss these. There's just a couple plays that I like. So I think we already discussed some of the playoff thoughts in the Big Ten preview. I will just say like flat out that I'm on Oklahoma over Alabama. That was minus 105 money line when I got it. And Miami plus 3.5 against Texas A&M. I actually think Miami's going to win that game out. And then I got Oregon at minus 20.5 for the playoff. That was before. It is at 21.5 now, so I got that early. So that's just playoff plays. But a couple of intriguing just bowl plays. Now, bowl plays are tricky. Like, they get trickier every year between opt-outs and NIL and coaching changes. It just gets harder and harder to figure out who is playing where. So I try to make some of these plays guessing, okay, what teams might be a little bit insulated from potential opt-outs? What teams do I like even if there are opt-outs? So the first one that I like is Utah State over Washington State. We've talked about Utah State quite a bit throughout the season. I think that Utah State is just they're a underrated team, even though they had a couple opportunities to play spoiler in the Mountain West against UNLV and they came up short, but they kept a lot of their games close even when they were losing them. I like just the general like tough I think that scheme works in a bowl game, right? And they're playing a Washington State team that was already bad to begin with and now doesn't have a coach because their coach is off to Iowa State, right? So I like that. I like Utah State in that one. Do we want to pause thoughts?
Yeah, Robert, do you want to? Can I just go first on this one?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, Bronco Mendenhall keeps on doing it against interim guy, and I don't know who the interim guy is. I don't know if I would know anything about him if I did know his name. But you want to talk about a program in a real upheaval spot. They lost Dickert. Their talent level just was trailing off a little bit, which is understandable given the Pac-2 that they play in. And it really fell off this year. Rogers had brought a lot of guys from, I think it was at South Dakota State. So he had brought some guys there, which I don't know if that's going to really compete at this level. They did have a nice little run where they almost beat Ole Miss and Virginia. But just losing two coaches in a row to bigger jobs it's roster homicide, basically. And to your point about who's going to be insulated, I think that you've got the exact opposite with Washington State. I don't know. There might be Isaiah Walker back there at free safety for some snaps.
Yeah, and I think, if you're Washington State, like, you lost your conference, you lost basically everything, and you couldn't even go 1 year without having your coach poached, and your coach got poached by Iowa State. I almost feel like there's going to be a fatigue. What is even the point of continuing? Like, as bad as my team is right now, as bad as the spot that Purdue is in right now, it's like at least we're in the Big Ten. At least we have a coach who is stable, right? Nobody is coming for Barry Odom anytime soon, right? So there's like at least a small ray of hope. But if you're a Washington State fan, what is there right now? Like,
yeah, I think they made a good hire, but that guy's busy at Missouri still. Yeah, that's a good eye. 3 points doesn't seem right there.
No, I liked the 3, and I got it without the hook. I got it just -3, so I like that. Next one I played, I think this one did move. I only played it on the money line because I just kind of feeling weird about the spread on it. So I played it -135 at the time with Clemson over Penn State. Penn State run is cute. Yeah, okay. Got to a bowl by playing Rutgers and not UCLA. A bunch of bad teams. You played 3 bad teams in a row, basically, except for the Nebraska game. But again, with Nebraska, you were playing a backup quarterback, and that kind of just got out of hand early. So that's cute. And you're playing one of the biggest underperformers for the season in Clemson. But I think that this is just one of those things where I think Penn State's going to be just absolutely ravaged by – this is the opposite. I think Penn State will be ravaged by opt-outs. If you are the 2 running backs for Penn State, what is your motivation to play in the – I think Pinstripe Bowl. Why do you want to go play in January outside in New York City, right? If you're any of their defensive starters who have a chance in the NFL, right? Because Singleton, et cetera, they can be NFL. They're going to go to the NFL. So why would you risk getting hurt for this meaningless game? And as soon as you take away any of those players, you're left with backup Penn State quarterback and a bunch of randos. So I think even though Clemson has underperformed this season, I think Clemson is a lot less likely to be completely killed by opt-outs there are obviously still some to watch, but also Clemson is a similar type team, defensive first. They're not going to win games by putting a ton of points up on the board. And you also have the last interim game coaching for Penn State, whereas it's still Dabo coaching here. And you know how Dabo is. We know how Dabo's ego is. He wants to win this game. He wants to at least come out of this with a win.
Fair. Robert, you respond first to that.
Yeah, I mean, my model has this basically break even, but when you do look at all the opt-outs, yeah, I think that could be an impact as well. I will say, though, at this point, though, the Penn State team that's left at this point, because there was a lot of injuries, obviously. Whoever is still playing for this team, there's probably, after their massive amounts of losses, they've gone on a bit of a run. And I think if you fought into that run and you're one of their players, I think you're riding with it. Clemson is whatever. They're not good, but they're not horrible. I think, my model has these, I think, roughly as, fringe top 30 teams. Roughly, which sounds crazy, but it's actually roughly where they are. I think I'd take Penn State here, but I need to see the opt-outs first, though. If there is a lot of opt-outs, then yeah, okay. And I think there are, because I think this line has moved actually already. I think it was, originally Penn State plus 1.5, and now it's up to Penn State plus 4.5. So I think there have been some opt-outs in this game. So that's something to consider as well.
We do have, actually, yep, I just looked it up. Nick Singleton is opting out.
Oh, okay, yeah. Then that's
as well as two defensive tackles, Zane Durant, defensive back, Zeki Wheatley. So you've got some defensive starters, but then you've got Nick Singleton backing up. That's pretty...
He's worth a couple points there, yeah.
Yeah.
K'Twan Allen's going to play? I can't see why. That wouldn't make any sense.
No, I don't think it makes any sense. Oh, and Vega Ione, projected first-round draft pick, he's opting out as well.
This is going to sound like... Sorry. This is going to sound...
This is why I got it early. This is why I went in on it early, because I think this is what we're going to see.
This is going to sound like I'm trolling you, but this is a serious question. And Robert, just don't laugh, because we've made a lot of jokes at this guy's expense. But is Cade Klubnik opting out?
No, I think that's a fair question, because I don't think he did. I don't think anything he did this year says early NFL draft pick. I don't think there's a lot of reason. What are you opting out for? To go in the third or fourth round, maybe, possibly. I don't think that really makes a lot of sense, but it's still something you should watch.
Yeah, and believe me, I'm not a believer in the guy. Who I'm really not a believer in is that backup who really stinks out loud. That's what would frighten me from the Clemson side. But yeah, I think you got programs in very different situations here. And the other thing too is Tennessee hired Jim Knowles, so I don't know if he's going to be around. They might be breaking in a first-time DC in an interim spot, which can go many ways.
Yeah, I think end of the day, this just feels like a dead team walking thing. Again, it's cool. You didn't give up on the season. It's cute. Also the 3 wins that got you here really do not move the needle at all.
Yeah.
Maybe the Nebraska game a little bit, even though they had the backup, but not really.
Yeah, and there's a difference between they actually did really well against Indiana.
Yeah, they did. They really should have won that game.
But that game at home is very different from this game in December at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah. This is the situation where the situation where our good friend PJ Fleck wins, but I don't know about
yes.
I don't know about Terry Smith with a bunch of opt-outs.
If only they could have him pinch hit.
Yeah, speaking of our good friend PJ Fleck, I like New Mexico against Minnesota, and it's not just a PJ Fleck thing. Now, this is a dangerous play because PJ Fleck is really good in Detroit Bowls and bowls that don't matter. This is when PJ Fleck shines. But I look at how Minnesota finished the season, and I feel as the season went on, we started seeing all the things we discussed about Minnesota in the preseason as being issues. They just started getting worse and worse as the season went on. The defense got worse as the season progressed. The offensive line continued to be a struggle, so you've got quarterback that's under siege. We can't run the ball, right? So we're in this really disadvantaged spot where we're not an offense that can run and gun and put up a ton of points, but we also can't stop the opponent. And you saw that in their loss to Northwestern at Wrigley Field. They turned Northwestern into Ohio State. Northwestern put up almost 40 points on them with the wind blowing 20 miles per hour. And like it's just wide open play after wide open play. When I look at this game, I think you have a team with a lot of red flags in Minnesota, and you have a team that I've really thought that just a darn impressive coaching job, really impressive from what they've done, what they went from, right? This has been a program that has just been ravaged for a couple of years. And I think all season there has been value on New Mexico. I had New Mexico against UCLA. Like that, I was all over that one. So I don't want to make it about PJ Fleck because this really isn't a fade of PJ Fleck. This would be a dumb spot to fade PJ Fleck. Again, it's a bowl that doesn't matter. But I just think that there's value on New Mexico here. They're plus 120 on the money line when I got it. And that's the play I like to make when I'm looking at bowl underdogs.
Let me ask you this. I can't disagree with anything. I would just wonder if the difference in talent, it just isn't a lot here. That would be my only concern. I'm a big believer in Jason Eck too, but boy, there's a lot of Idaho guys
Oh yeah,
on that roster. And I don't know, they're coherent because of it. That would be my concern. And believe me, I think that I don't remember if Mr. Lindsay made the bum list. I think he might have made it once or twice this year.
There's definitely a concern and lack of talent here, and I definitely thought about it before I play this. The reason I was okay in the end in taking a shot is, and again, this is like trying to find a value on an underdog play, right? I looked at this game, I like the coaching for New Mexico, and I like the potential spot. But then I looked at, okay, what do I have here to say that the talent is too much on Minnesota? But then I look, okay, what did Minnesota do in the non-conference? 23-10 against Buffalo. That edged horribly. They did not cover the spread in that game. And that game was close into the fourth quarter before Minnesota put it away. And then they lost outright by 13 points to Cal. So I guess if you want to take a 66-0 win over Northwestern State,
there you go.
That's okay. That's fine. But I guess I just don't look at anything that they've done this season as an indicator that yes, they do have Power 4 talent. That is true. But like, so does Rutgers, and so does Michigan State, right? Like, it's not all equal. So I think, I don't know. I just feel like there's so many red flags around this team right now. And yeah, they ended off the season on a win, and it was a win over Wisconsin. What was that, the Super Bowl again? Because the fans stormed the field.
Yes.
Beating that Wisconsin team. So that's incredible.
Yeah. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. The thing is, like, with a lot of these bowl games, and again, we joke about the military industrial complex bowls and all this stuff. Like, the LA Bowl that happened last night, that was between a Washington team who had unresolved issues from the season, that season could have been a lot more, but for the second year in a row, they didn't capitalize on key moments, and a Boise State team that definitely shouldn't have been there. I don't know why they were Mountain West champions. I want someone to explain to me how they got into the Mountain West championship game, but whatever, they were, and they got absolutely destroyed by 30 points, 35, something like that. I don't even remember what the final score was. It wasn't even close.
No, it was a complete blowout.
Yeah. I think we're getting to a point where, like, with that and a bunch of teams just straight out opting out of bowls at a cost of $500,000, by the way, to the conference. They have to pay conference cash conference for opting out of a bowl. I think we're starting to see the end of. I think the end of these bowl games is on the horizon. It'll be replaced by something else, but I think the end of them, as we know them, is on the horizon. And again, this is even clear, right? They said that basically, I think the day before the game came out, this was going to be the last LA Bowl, right? No more LA Bowl. Now maybe it'll be replaced by another bowl. I don't know. But when you look at all these opt-outs, especially with some of these kind of lower tier bowl games, when we're at a point where it's, oh, okay, yeah, this like Mountain West team is going to play a Sun Belt team at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday, it's okay. Clearly this is clearly just padding for TV, like for TV rights, right? Like just padding for TV inventory. And that's fine. Be honest with what it is. But what you can do is, if you wanted to, you could easily fill that with a G5 playoff. You could fill that with
yes.
And then what I think the next conversation is going to be on is it's going to be on a college football NIT, where it's going to be like, yeah, okay, let's the teams that don't make the college football playoff, let's make them their own NIT. And then maybe you could, because that's functionally what this is, right? It's not actually scored in any way. and you have people like random teams playing random games, but that's functionally what this is supposed to be. So I think we're getting to a point where it's just like there's not much value in a lot of these bowls for the sponsors because clearly no one can sponsor this LA Bowl. Half of these are military contractors, a bunch of them are like mortgage companies. It's just random companies that are sponsoring these bowls. I don't think they're actually getting the revenue. I don't think they're getting any actual tangible revenue from these bowl games. But some minor exception, I think Pop-Tarts. But like Pop-Tarts is the lone exception of being an actually cool bowl. There's like very few other ones. This is the thing. And I think this is playing into the whole New Mexico versus Minnesota. Does Minnesota care about this game? No. They apparently won the Super Bowl by beating Wisconsin. Who's going to be up more for that game? Is it going to be New Mexico? They get a chance to take down a Big Ten team? Or Minnesota that's like, yeah, we have to go fly to some random city and play this random other team, and I guess we don't even know who's going to be on our team next year. So good luck. That's what these bowl games have become. And I think, honestly, in a lot of these games, yeah, I have no problem betting on a G5 team to upset a Big Ten team or whatever, especially when the G5 team is going to be far more motivated. And the Power 4 team is just kind of, what are we doing here? Like, why are we playing? Do you think Minnesota's, yeah, let's get up and let's go crush New Mexico? No, they don't care. But New Mexico would love to take down Minnesota, though, right? So this is the point where, honestly, and you even saw it last year, the SEC had a horrible bowl season last year. And that's not even including the games like that. That's excluding games that they even just straight lost in the Big Ten. Like, they lost other games, too, against other teams that they had no business losing to. So this is the thing. I think these bowl games are so motivation based that, honestly, I think there's going to be huge issues with these going forward. I think we're not there yet. But I think I'm starting to see the horizon where there's no more bowl games.
Yeah. This is why I mentioned in our Big Ten preview too. If I were when we were talking about the playoff committee, if I were the committee and if I were the conferences, I would start levying penalties for opting out of bowl games. If you want these bowl games to not die in a year or two, that's not to say it will solve the motivation problem. But if you don't want these games to just die and to make it where we're in a situation where, okay, didn't make the playoff, we're going home, bye. Like, you should, the conferences, you should say, okay, you opted out, we're going to fine you. We're going to fine you for not playing because we want that revenue too. We're going to fine you for not playing in that game. Or if you're the playoff committee and you look at what Notre Dame did and you said, oh, so you're just going to quit as soon as we didn't choose you. You know what? We're going to take that into account next year. We're going to think about that, and that will be part of the selection criteria. Is that you just opted out of the rest of the season because you didn't make it? Like that, I would totally support that.
But I think the fact that they're not doing that means that they're totally okay with this dying, because I think they realize This is pointless and a waste of time.
What's interesting too is you get the Big 12, and so many teams are out. It's all right. I'm basically writing a check to myself, because this is basically conference money, right? I'm getting more than half of this back. So your idea about a college football NIT, I was a little off board with that. But then if they do what they did last year with that players era for college basketball, and they have like money at stake, I think that would make it very far superior to the bowls. Feel like just an 8-team thing. I think that would really work. I'm wondering, is maybe if Gronk presents the LA Bowl, is he the one that pulled? Is he pulling out like the reason that it is going to be no more?
I don't even know. I think there's no sponsor. But the thing is, with the Pop-Tarts Bowl, obviously you have Pop-Tarts, Cheez-It Bowl, Cheez-Its, Mayo Bowl. But like, what? Just Gronk? Just the presence of Gronk? What happens if he dies? Then just not obviously, but like eventually he will not be on this earth. Like, we're all not going to be on this earth at some point. Is that going to be the end of the Gronk Bowl? Like 50 years from now, there's no more Gronk Bowl? Like,
yes. With all the swipes you've taken at the military-industrial complex bowls, you're giving the horrible American diet a pass here, because you just string them together like a mayonnaise bowl, a Cheez-Its bowl, and a Pop-Tarts bowl. Can't we just have just the junk food complex bowl generically instead of those three?
The mortgage complex bowl too.
Yes. Yeah, it cannot be overstated how horribly that Buffalo win aged. Buffalo was a very mid-tier MAC team. It wasn't like they did that against Western Michigan or something. I don't know about this. Drake Lindsay is not good. The guy who really sticks out for me, they have a good running back.
He's very good, Darius Taylor. He's very good.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
He had issues all season because the offensive line is so bad.
Yeah. But on defense, Koi Parrish, is he
Yeah.
opting out? Because he's highly thought of. That'd be interesting to me, too.
Let me check. I haven't seen anything on it yet. But I think he was also hurt for a decent amount of the season. I don't see anything official on it. Yeah, I don't see anything official on it, but I also wouldn't be totally surprised, especially he's good enough to go pro. So we'll see. Like, if I were him, I would have zero motivation to
Yeah.
play another Detroit Bowl. That's the other thing. I guess if you want to be fair to Minnesota, like I mentioned, if we talk about motivation on their end, they always end up in these bowls. This is what PJ Fleck has done outside of that one season where they went and beat Auburn in the Citrus Bowl. They go to Detroit or they go to Yankee Stadium and they play some middling AC team or whatever or MAC team and they usually beat them. That's what Fleck has made a name on himself now for. Again, this is typically their wheelhouse. I just think that this isn't that good of a team. And I think New Mexico has a lot of motivation in here, and I think they have the pieces and the coaching to come in and win this game.
Yeah, Taylor was so much better last year, too.
And even last year, he was better, but even last year, his complete limiting factor was not him, it was the offensive line. It was the same issue. On the motivation factor, I have two more. Utah laying a pretty big number. It was 14 and a half. I think it's up to 16 and a half now. I like Utah in a blowout over Nebraska. That's Kyle Whittingham retirement game. Whoever's playing for Utah, I think they're going to go full in on that. We know that Nebraska's shorthanded with the quarterback situation. They have basically mailed in their last couple games. They beat UCLA, but they absolutely blown out by Penn State, wiped off the planet by Iowa. I don't think there's a lot here for Nebraska to play for, to care for. I don't think they have a ton of motivation for this game either, who's left. But I do think that Kyle Whittingham's last game means something for Utah.
Yeah.
So I like Utah laying a big number there. And then I like Arizona outright against SMU. Better team, more tested, great defense. Don't really see what SMU brings to this one. So I like Arizona in that game.
Total of 51 and a half.
Is that what it
high.
is? That does seem a little high.
Arizona is just the ultimate under team here.
Yeah, I think also you just look at SMU. You just played in a really bad ACC. I don't know how much I trust you.
Yeah, the Big 12 is a far superior conference to me, especially defensively.
Which is, boy, tell somebody that 5 years ago.
Yeah, I know exactly. Yeah, a really good eye on SMU. I agree with that. The other one, I totally get the case. That's just a lot of points.
But I felt better with it when it was at the 14 mark. Now that it's up to 17, I would probably not feel as good about it. But again, I mean, if you lose by 40 to Iowa.
Yeah, and it's not like they want to squeak one out here. I'm sure that given the chance,
and that was a rivalry game at home.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Your thoughts on those, Robert?
My model actually does have SMU as slight favorites over Arizona, which is interesting. I'm not sure exactly how much I believe that, but I think SMU was actually not bad this year. And yeah, they took down Miami. I don't think that one is necessarily a fluke. Yeah, they lost to Cal, and that had they beaten Cal, that might have fixed a lot of the problems of what happened. Because then they would have been in the championship game, and then they probably would have been ranked ahead of JMU, and then maybe then in that case, then maybe they don't move. Maybe then they just leave the rankings where they are, or this is the part here, right? Is it like, did they move Notre Dame and Miami just because there was no other ACC team in? That's a conspiracy theory that I have. It's possible, but that's really dumb. But whatever. But again, things would have been. I think had SMU beaten that one against Cal, they'd be in the playoff right now. I don't think they're that bad, actually. I think they're a team that actually might care about this. But Arizona also a pretty good team too, right? So there's a lot of pieces to some of these. I think I'd take SMU there though, but I think their quarterback's a bit better than Arizona's, but that's my take.
All right. Cool. Gentlemen, thank you both. Wishing everybody out there a Merry Christmas. I asked Gemini to put us in Santa costumes, and it didn't really do well. Although it did brand Robert again with the "Don't Mess with Texas" gear. Isaiah, thank you for joining us again. Robert, I will see you in about 30 hours when we discuss the SEC teams with Graham Coffee. So, gentlemen, thank you both. And again, everyone out there, thank you for listening, viewing, whatever, and happy holidays to you.
See ya.
All right.